Back on the record in the case of State versus Leon Lamar Tripp and Tanya Faye Tripp, indictment number 2023 RCCR 01585. We are back for sentencing of the defendant, and at this time I'll hear from the state.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, the state would like to begin by tendering State's Exhibit 93, which is the state's notice of intent to seek recidivist punishment for Mr. Leon Tripp. This was filed on the 9th day of February of 2026. Attached to the notice is a certified copy of a conviction for Mr. Tripp, that conviction being number 09SC07790 out of the Superior Court of Fulton County. In this document, Mr. Tripp pled guilty to 1 count of aggravated stalking. We can present this to Your Honor at this time if you would like. And as I stated, it is attached to the recidivist notice. Mr. Tripp is recidivist under OCGA 1710-7A.
Thank you very much. And will you explain what that means in layman's terms?
Your Honor, it means that he does have to receive the maximum sentence in this case.
Thank you. For the record, Ms. Stengel, is there any opposition or objection to the recidivist notice or punishment?
No, Your Honor, I did receive that and acknowledge that it is appropriately applied.
Thank you very much.
I apologize, Judge. I did want to clarify because I've seen this in the past. It doesn't mean that everything has to run consecutive. He just has to receive the maximum sentence on each charge.
Yes, Your Honor. Also with regards to statements, as Your Honor knows, Ms. Carwell was in the court for most of the trial when she testified. She is essentially the one living relative of the victim that is left in this case. She is currently raising the sister of the victim. She was able to be in the courtroom until I think the last day when we showed the pictures of her niece's remains. After that, she got ill, Your Honor. Just to be frank, she got ill in the women's bathroom and decided that she was not going to be able to come back. I know she's watching on live stream. I've been communicating with her this morning, and since the verdict has come back, she did not want to give a formal statement. However, she did send this message that I would like to read to the court at this time.
Yes, ma'am.
She stated that this incident weighed heavily on her husband, Charles. As Your Honor knows, there was testimony that her husband did die a couple of years ago. She stated that he died crying. She states, Ms. Tripp knew better. They both knew better. She did not appreciate some of the attacks on her husband during the interviews, and it broke her heart. It broke her heart more that neither Mr. Tripp or Mrs. Tripp could even look at her or her daughter, her now daughter, Tanijah. She states they are still choosing themselves after causing so much hurt to so many people. They deserve to sit and never see the light of day. She has no support or sympathy for either of them. And Your Honor, I will state in the investigation phase of this case, and I've had this case probably longer than any case that I've had in my career, but we have talked to numerous witnesses who we chose not to have testify in the trial. But pretty much everybody that we spoke to always talked about the great impact that this case had on them. We spoke to a classmate of Janelle's about 2 weeks ago. He said that he's still not kind of recovered from just one day you have a student with you in class and the next day they're missing, and then a year later you're finding bones. These kids were 15, 16 when this was going on, and it's greatly impacted all of them. We did speak, and she's referenced in one of the videos with the best friend of Janelle. She stated that she's never really gotten over this incident from losing her best friend. We didn't tender these, but the last text message was actually to that young lady, and then after that, for weeks after that, she is texting, trying to get in touch with her friend, her best friend. And again, Ms. Tripp says it's her best friend for some time afterwards. This is just a devastating loss to the community, to the people who knew her personally, additionally to those who didn't know her, but learned of her through the search for her. So this is a great loss for the community, and we would just ask for the maximum for both of these defendants.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Stankel?
Thank you, Your Honor. Obviously, I know we've just sat through a trial, so I want to really focus my presentation more on telling you about Mr. Tripp. I know a lot of, the evidence in trial, we really didn't learn much about him. So he grew up in downtown Atlanta. There was being poor, and then there's a level of poor that Leon lived in. His dad was a pop-up mechanic. His mother was a stay-at-home mom who worked to raise 9 full siblings and 4 half-siblings of Leon's. Leon's father was a heavy drinker and gambler. He was very abusive, both to Leon's mother and the children. In fact, actually the eldest Tripp child, Robert Jackson, started having to provide for the family as early as 10 years old, just due to the inability of the parents to provide for the kids. Leon struggled in school. He dropped out in the 8th grade, and I would note that when he dropped out in the 8th grade, he was actually 16 years old. And so he had to repeat several grades, several times. He has an IQ of 62. Obviously, we were not in a position to present that in trial, but we have provided the raw data for that. He had been evaluated in the course of preparing for this case, and I believe that was actually tendered in a pretrial proceeding previously. So he does have an IQ of 62. Most teachers described Leon as a sweet kid. He was struggling with doing his work, but he's very artistic, and he expresses himself through art better than words. I know people are very concerned about what he's been doing during trial, writing down and things like that. There are difficult moments where he has just had to sort of process things the way he does and draw. And I'm not tendering this at all, but I just would like Your Honor to see he's extremely talented. Drew this freehand. And so actually, in fact, he's been at the jail so long that even previous commands at CBW have had Leon's styrofoam sculptures be displayed in the jail. They acknowledged sort of their uniqueness, and they wanted to kind of add a positive use of time that he has spent his time positively for the large part in the detention center. I would also acknowledge that Leon also has 2 older daughters biologically. And that is Nyana, who is 20, and Anaya, who is 18. Leon loves his family. He is kind. He's been given a very difficult hand his whole life, but he has largely grinned and bared it. He's been lied to a lot by a lot of people. He's very easy to deceive, and that has been used to take advantage of him quite a lot. That being said, even faced with, this terrible situation and the accusations people have made against him throughout the course of all of this, he still has people who support him. Clarence Thomas was actually his longtime employer prior to him getting arrested. We were planning to potentially call Mr. Thomas. We ultimately decided as strategy not to, but he was willing and able to come, and he was wanting to come, and he is someone who still supports Leon and even says to this day, if Leon needed a job, he would rehire him. Additionally, even Leon's ex-wife, Makeda Kay, who that prior conviction was against, even given that he went to prison, for a case with her, she was also willing to come in and speak to Leon's good nature. And so he does have people out there who still very much value him. Like I said, he's been in jail 9 years. You can see from the video versus this man today, it has worn on him. I think because it has taken so long, I believe almost every attorney in our agency has touched this case, and they have all left, again, with a positive view of Leon. I haven't had the case as long, but I feel lucky to have represented him, and I'm sorry. I apologize. I would just ask Your Honor to take all this into consideration. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Mr. Rakes?
Well, I guess we all have a different perspective. I can only talk about the Tanya Tripp I've known for the last 2 or 3 years. And the day I met her, she told me what happened, and she's told me what happened several times since then, and it has never changed. She now understands partly why there's a level of disdain for her, because she truly believed in Leon Tripp. She truly believed in that man. Although when I met her 3 years ago, all she would refer to him was as him. I'm asking that she not spend every day for the rest of her life inside of a prison, but wherever she spends every day for the rest of her life, she will be in her own prison, because she is a vastly different person now than a person I met 2 or 3 years ago when she was full of life, and she would have conversations with me. Now when I see her, she shows no life. She barely speaks, and when she speaks, it's barely above a whisper. She's lost everything, and the only time I get any emotion out of her is when she cries when talking about her daughter, and when she cries when talking about what she believes Leon did to their daughter. And so I'm asking that the court exercise whatever discretion it has, and it has some, but it has the discretion to allow her the possibility of spending a day of her life at some point being in a prison outside of the prison, being in, I guess, what some would call the free world. She has no criminal history as far as I know. There certainly was no recidivist notice. She is a high school graduate, and listening to the testimony even after the situation happened, when they were at the house of a friend, how that younger daughter would always climb and crawl to be under her mother. The mother who took them to church that day and took pictures of them that day. I'm asking for that mother that child at that time loved, and that mother at that time took pictures of her daughters, be allowed to have some form of a life, as it were, outside of a prison, inside of a prison.
Thank you, Mr. Rakes. I want to start off here saying, as I told the lawyers on yesterday, commending each one of them on the job that they did in their respective jobs during this trial, that the case was well tried. The attorneys were more than competent. The arguments were impressive. The representation by the state, by the lawyers for the state, and by the lawyers for each defendant was admirable. I spent 40 years representing criminal defendants myself before I came on the bench, and I understand how hard it is to sit in the courtroom after your client has been convicted, regardless of what the evidence might indicate. Because there are no winners here today. No one won anything here today. It's heartbreaking, the whole situation. But I was just thinking, I have a daughter, she is in her 30s now. And I was just thinking that if at 16, if somebody took my daughter to Atlanta and I had no transportation, I would get out and start walking to Atlanta to get her. I would be directly like on the phone saying, hey, if my daughter don't turn up here soon, and I'm talking about within the next 5 minutes, I'm on the way. And it ain't gonna be pretty when I get there. So, I don't have any enemies in this courtroom or friends when we come to sentencing. So, emotion has nothing to do with it. It's just what I believe the law will call for in a case like this. Because in the final analysis, a 16-year-old child got dumped in a hole. And I kept my eyes on this jury ever since they took the oath. Not a one of them went to sleep. Not a one of them were inattentive. They showed up on time and they did their job. So it ain't what I believed what happened, it's what they believe what happened, and they reached a fair and impartial verdict. Now, I got to sentence appropriately in this case. And I'll just go ahead and say it from the jump. It ain't gonna be easy to sentence. It's just, this case doesn't call for it. So, in regards to Leon Lamar Tripp, count 1, malice murder, the court will sentence Mr. Tripp to life without parole. As to count 2, felony murder, life without parole. I understand those 2 sentences will merge into one sentence of life without parole. As to the count 3, aggravated assault, family violence, court's gonna sentence Leon Tripp to a 20-year consecutive sentence in confinement. As to count 4, concealing the death of another, the court will sentence Leon Tripp to 10 years in confinement. That sentence runs concurrent with the sentence in count 3, which means that Mr. Tripp has been sentenced to a sentence of life without the possibility of parole, followed by 20 years in essence, because the 10-year sentence on count 3 will run concurrent with the sentence in count 3. As to Mrs. Tripp, Ms. Tanya Tripp, as to count 1, malice murder, the court will sentence Mrs. Tripp to a sentence of life without parole. As to count 2, felony murder, the court sentences Tanya Tripp to life without parole. As to count 3, aggravated assault, the court sentences Tanya Tripp to 20 years. As to count 4, concealing the death of another, the court will sentence her to 10 years. All the sentences run concurrent with each other. As stated earlier, the sentences of malice murder and felony murder merge into one sentence of life without the possibility of parole. Because Ms. Tripp does not have any felony convictions, I ran her sentences concurrent to give her the benefit of that. Of course, with a life without parole sentence, my understanding, it means no parole. And that will be the sentence of the court.
Are we in recess?
We are in recess.